Great, thank you so much. So today my class is going to be over how we do outreach with cross gaming groups and sort of niche groups and make those connections to the SCA. My name is Antigone of York. I hail from the Barony of Steps, Kingdom of Onstiora. Our map is right here in my view behind me. At Steps, we have pioneered a lot of and borrowed a lot of recruiting and retention and marketing ideas and things of that nature. And a subset of that is we've been very heavily involved with a lot of other organizations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I have some really unique experience with this because I actually started in another organization called AmpGuard. We have a plethora of us that actually started over there and came over to the SCA. And so I am a direct kind of recruit from there, if you would. So I do have some idea of kind of what attracts those people into the organization and what keeps them coming back. So without further ado, this class is in two parts. The first part is kind of me giving my spiel about different steps and ways that this works. And then after that is the second half is very Q&A. Oftentimes the local area is very kind of diverse as far as what you have available to you and what groups and what issues you may face. So that second half is going to be more of Q&A and discussion and specific points that any of the people that are watching this involved in the chat have, and we'll just kind of go from there. So, so I am from the South. Texas is, I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. We do have a lot of cross gaming there. There are a lot of different groups. We have HEMA, we have the ACL, which is the full metal armor combat. We have AmpGuard. We have various different cosplay groups out there, probably about 100 different groups. We also have a lot of ties to HFS when it was around. I'm not entirely sure if it's still around, but we have ties to it. We've also had Bellegarth and Daggahir visit as well. And there was also another historical fencing club out there that was kind of more individualized to the local area that we have had come out and join us as well. So we have a lot of stuff going on here in the DFW area. So the first part really about cross gaming is you have to understand that this isn't necessarily recruiting. So it is and it isn't. What we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a connection between the SCA and other groups, and between the other groups and the SCA. And what that does is it creates kind of a social bridge so that those people who are interested in that organization and from that organization have a reason to come visit the SCA, try it out, and enjoy it. The idea of recruiting into the SCA is often met with a lot of skepticism and a lot of problems in these groups because they've had some bad interactions potentially, or they've had no interactions, but they're very hesitant and they feel like you're trying to steal members from their group into yours. And that is the opposite of what we want to do. What we want to do is, like I said, create more of a bridge. And this allows our members to go over and check out them, and their members to come check out us. It's very important that when you're talking about cross gaming and niche outreach and things of those nature, that you understand that you have to be very careful about how you kind of present what you are talking about, and make sure that this is a mutual interest sort of idea, rather than I'm trying to steal members, or my organization is better than yours, or we do these things better than you. We don't want to create that sort of concept or idea or environment, or even have that kind of be the perspective that we're showing them. So a lot of times people say, well, this is really difficult, and they aren't interested, and it's possible that they're not. That doesn't mean that you can't have a good relationship with them, and that it's not worthwhile to kind of keep those lines of communication open. Oftentimes, if you show kindness, you're welcoming to them. You aren't, putting down, oh, they want to wear elf ears. Okay, I don't care if you wear elf ears. It doesn't bother me at all. If you want to wear elf ears while you sit and sew your, 14th century Tudor gown or whatever, that's fine. I don't care. So a lot of times we do have to be a little bit more relaxed in the firm SCA belief that you have to be period and you have to be and dress a certain way. You're going to have to kind of get rid of those notions if you're going to do this sort of work, and instead kind of gear more towards finding commonality. So the step pre-step one, we'll call it, is is kind of guiding your local group or whatever area you're going to be inviting these people to be a little bit more welcoming and a little more understanding of people that may show up that aren't exactly the SCA mold right out of the box, that maybe they have a little bit of interest in something, but they're not terribly sure yet, and they may show up wearing weird or unusual garb, or maybe none at all. They may seem really cautious or nervous or introverted, and so your goal is to have everyone that talks to them be welcoming, kind, and excited that they're there. So that's pre-step. So step one is identifying the other organizations in your area that may have a potential connection with the SCA, even if it's really, really minute. Sometimes it can present itself in really odd ways. For example, here locally, we have a lot of anime conventions and a lot of cosplay. And so when we looked originally, when it was talked about going to anime conventions and cosplay and things like that, everyone said, oh, well, that's all fantasy and that anime has nothing to do with the SCA. And the reality is it actually has a lot of crossover. We have a lot of crossover between costuming. Most people who are in anime and cosplay, they love costumes. And so what better way than to, make a 40K, costume than to come and hang out with us and learn how to maybe up your sewing skills or get some ideas of how to make, a futuristic Tudor Barbie, a gown. So there's a lot of crossover that can occur if you start thinking kind of outside of the box. I know the last convention we did, our main pool was costuming, heraldry, sword fighting, specifically rapier. And strangely enough, we also had music actually attracted a lot of people, because we started kind of an ocarina band. As it started off as a joke, but we all really love it. So, but it's just fun. Is that necessarily period? No, but it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of a gateway into going into the recorder, which can be a little bit more period music. And so we actually had a huge draw just by looking outside of the box and saying, oh, we actually do have some commonality. So that's step two, is once you've kind of identified different groups or conventions and things of that nature, organizations that you want to do this outreach with, is establish commonality. So first you're going to have to decide what you think that commonality might be. But just because you think that your commonality is going to be X, I'm just going to use X because it's easy, that doesn't mean that that's what it actually is going to end up being. So you have to also be really flexible in establishing commonality, because you may present a whole bunch of options that you think are, oh, these are exactly what these type of people or that are interested in this organization they're in would like in the SCA. And they may be like, oh yeah, you know what, that's not okay. And then you may talk about something random like, oh, well, we really have a lot of fun at equestrian, and that's really cool thing that we do. And they would be like, wait, horses? And then suddenly, you have everybody coming over to do equestrian, and you're like, I didn't even know that was on the table. So you kind of have to be flexible when you're establishing that commonality. And it could be, like I said, it could be anything. it could be something that is one of the big name things, heavy fighting, you know, rapier fighting. It could be sewing, it could be heraldry, it could be calligraphy, or it could be something super, super small like, oh, I want to get into leatherworking from this particular style. So it could go very, very small and niche. So the step 4 is meeting up with that organization at one of their meetups. That's not invite them to yours and expect them to show up. No, you go to theirs first. And the reason why is so that you can show you are genuinely interested in what they do and who they are. And it's also so you can learn about what they do. Learning about what the other organization does and how they function can be incredibly helpful in understanding the people that are attracted to it. It also can be incredibly helpful in the SCA. Because if they're doing something really cool, guess what? You can also do that same cool thing in the SCA and make the SCA better. And then if you convince them to come to an event or a populous meeting or whatever that is that step of commonality, and they show up and they're like, wow, this is really cool, they can also make their group better. So it's, as I said, it's a bridge of communication, not I'm trying to take people away. And so by taking that first step and you going there, that shows you have interest in them. And once you have established, oh, I'm interested in what you're doing, oftentimes people are like, oh, okay, well, if you're interested in what I'm doing, I should be interested in what you're doing. And then you can invite them to come out to something of the SCA. Whatever that is, please make sure that it is something that would interest that group of people that you are inviting. So if they're really interested in rapier fighting, you wouldn't invite them to an ANS event that doesn't have any rapier fighting. I know that sounds like common sense, but a lot of times we get really excited that we have people that want to come and we're like, oh, well, the first thing we have is this, you should come to this. And that doesn't really bode well. Make sure you're curating what they see first. And that's not to hide that like there's anything wrong with any of our other activities, but it's so that they create that connection of, oh, this is really cool and this is something I'm interested in. Because those first impressions are incredibly important. As I'm sure all of us know as hospitalers, that first perception, that first interaction, you know, it can make or break if somebody stays in the SCA. 100%. So just with any other person, that's exactly what you have to curate here. So number 5 is, like I said, invite those people over. And so number 6, sorry, I kind of skipped over that. That was step 5. Step 6 is that we want to continue to foster that open and welcoming environment with any group that we have those connections with. So that doesn't mean after that initial, you go there and then they come here, you stop talking to them. You may find that, you know, what their organization does isn't super interesting to you and you don't really want to go to their stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But you may have other people that show up to the SCA and they'll be like, yeah, you know what, this isn't really my bag of things I want to be in. I'm really not interested in any of this, but I'm interested in X. And X is this organization that you went to like maybe a couple of months ago and saw some really cool stuff that maybe this person's interested in. Like, oh, you know what? There's this other organization that's really cool. It would be right up your alley. Here's their contact information. I know these people. I'll let them know you're coming. And then you send them there. And some of you are going, oh, well, but you lost somebody. Yeah, we lost one person. But if we are able and willing to send people to their organization, and we talk their organization up, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do that in reverse. And they will. And it's been established, and we've done it here in DFW quite often, where we'll send people to, you know, maybe AmpGuard because they want to do boffer more. They want to do something that, you know, is a little bit more low key, a little more fantasy aspect. So we'll send them there, and then maybe they'll get people who are like, oh, well, but I want to wear like armor and do this thing. And they'll send people over to us. So by having that bridge and being willing to say, hey, this isn't for you maybe, but this other thing is, that other group will reciprocate. I haven't had a group not reciprocate that sort of kind of back and forth. So we've been really successful for it. So I highly encourage you doing that. So the last kind of miscellaneous piece to this is, you know, the main goal in all of this, I think you've heard, is making people feel welcome, making them feel wanted, and making them feel like they can be a part of this community. We don't really want to give any sort of commentary or perception or verbiage about how the SCA is better. We don't want to offer criticism to their organization in any way, shape, or form. It's not our place to talk badly about other groups, organizations, or people, or any of that nature. So refrain from doing that. And then we also, anytime they come out, we want to thank them every single time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for checking the SCA out. You know, we look forward to seeing you again. You say it every single time. So anytime I get a new person blanket, but especially from other groups, I will personally go up to them and thank them. And say, you know, I'm so happy you're here and I hope you enjoyed it. You know, what do you think? And get their ideas, and I have a conversation with them. I take the time out of my day to do that, and it means a lot to those people. And so that would be kind of like the last miscellaneous step, is to slow down a little bit. I know we all go to SCA, we all have our own kind of bubbles we sit in, and then we kind of get so, you know, self-involved in everything that's going on and everything we're doing. We don't take a second to kind of step out of that and take time to thank other people for coming, new people especially, and to, you know, go have those conversations to make people know that they are wanted and welcome in our group. So that would kind of be the last little bit that I would say. So there's a couple of things in the chat I'm going to address, and then I'm going to open it up to straight up just whatever questions you guys want to have. Is it possible to get the full name of the acronyms of the group? Those were all I think the only one that I skipped was ACL, which I'm not, the only reason I'm not 100% sure of the full name of that one. I'm so sorry. But it is the Full Metal group. Somebody in the chat's probably going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And HEMA, embarrassingly enough, I don't know exactly what that stands for. Let's say we just had a practice in Southern Atenvelt, and we asked the local AmpGuard group to do a demo partway through our mini Pass to Arms free practice. It was a first for us, and it went over really, like, that's really freaking cool. So so that's a great way to kind of bridge that gap and say, hey, you know, we have this practice that's going on that's pretty big. You know, it'd be really cool if you guys want to show up and like do a demo and show us what you're all about. Like that's brilliant, actually. Yes, SCA folks do a lot of cosplay, and a lot of cosplayers love to have SCA to come on. Have a lot of fun. That is one thing I will say I'm all about, is fun. Sometimes things that we do, especially here in the steps, are a little SCA adjacent, we call them, but they're fun. And if they're fun, then we should do them. Kung Fu Studios, potential crossover. That is true. So again, that's, like I said, kind of thinking outside of the box, out of sort of fantasy, and people who already do LARPs and things of that nature, is like the actual martial arts gyms themselves. We have had limited sort of crossover for that. We have had a couple of people that'll come and say, oh, I've done martial arts and things like that. We talked to some martial arts schools and things of that nature. So that is definitely an avenue to try. I know there's a couple of places that they actually have their practice in different studios. Thank you. American Combat League. Thank you. Appreciate you. And Historical European Martial Arts, HEMA. Thank you. Or High European Martial Arts. Okay, whichever one. Sorry. So that being said, that's kind of the first half of the entire presentation and idea of kind of the concept that I'm presenting today. My area has a few joints with unofficial rebels and AmpGuard. Absolutely. So if you have some sort of joint group, you know, get together with another organization, that's really cool and is great outreach as well. And that fosters, especially if you do it together, that fosters like a sense of community and kind of makes that bridge that you're trying to build stronger. So Does anybody have any specific questions to your area or anything else you want to comment on? Don't see anything. So, joint indoor practices with Amgar and Belgar. No, that actually is a really good point. So I know that here in Ulster, we've had some issues with our fighter practices due to temperatures, and just the environment outside is usually trying to kill us or drown us. And so a lot of groups have started looking at doing indoor practices, and have struggled because of the kind of the costs of the indoor practice can be not manageable depending upon the size of your group. So if your fighter practice is really small, it's going to be hard to justify paying for an indoor space that maybe costs you $50 a practice. But if you split that with, say, another local LARP group that also practices Amtgard, Belgard, which is what this individual Alexander from Outlands is saying, then maybe you can then go be like, hey, now we can actually afford some indoor practice if we split it with this other group. They pay half, we pay half, maybe. And so that's a great way to kind of solve that issue of, I have too small of a practice to afford an indoor location, but I really need one in order to grow my practice. Let's see. Yes. So sometimes there are some really great events, but they're really expensive, and people from other groups are hesitant to stop by for an hour or two and pay the site fee. So as we all know, the SCA site fees have gotten more and more expensive. Some of them, sometimes we're able to keep them kind of reasonable, and every once in a while it's just not feasible. They're going to creep up higher, I can tell you that right now, and continue to go higher and higher because, well, sites cost more. It costs more to do what we want to do. Here in DFW, we actually fight with wedding venues. So a lot of the sites have realized that they can do wedding venues and charge a whole lot of money and make it and be booked solid for the year. So we have to fight with those kind of wedding venues and other types of activities in order to get sites that we can afford. So that becomes problematic when you're looking at somebody who maybe is in a LARP where they get to do it for free, and they're used to like, oh, well, an event is like maybe $5-10, because it's at a free park and they're paying for their lunch and that's it. So one of the things that we kind of started is sort of I'm not going to say it's like it's very nebulous, but it's sort of where we will just pay for their entrance fee if it's their first event. So some of us are a little more financially well off than others, and we like to give back in the community by paying for people's entrance into events. So a lot of times if we have somebody that we know that's coming that's new, that maybe, that $20 just isn't in their budget, or, especially if they're bringing their family, then we'll just kind of be like, okay, no problem. Well, your gate's paid for, so come on in. And absolutely, we also very much promote local activities are no cost to you. And that works really, really well. So that's kind of one of the ways that we've handled that sort of situation. Our kingdom is very rich in square miles, but we have very small populace. Any suggestions we might undertake some of this cross-pollination virtually? Absolutely. So our local group here has used Discord as a mainstay. We do all of our socialization. So a lot of our event planning and very formal announcements and things of that nature on Facebook, but all of our socialization is on Discord. Discord seems to be way more popular with sort of the younger crowd. It is really easy to use. It offers a lot more robust kind of technology for doing this sort of communication that we're talking about. And then on top of that, you can do Zoom meetups with those other organizations and various other things like that. I am not an expert on how to do virtual kind of setups and how all that works. So my suggestion would be very much, you know, look at what sort of virtual technology do those other groups have. What are they interested in and what do they do? And then, you know, start kind of working to bridge those areas. First session dealt with targeted Facebook ads. I'm not sure what that means, Zeke, unfortunately. If you want to clarify, then I can address it. Serena from OnStewart. Hello, OnStewart. I have found ANS classes are a good entry level for LARP and AMCAR, and that's true. So as long as that's what they're interested in. So not every LARP AMCARder is going to be interested in ANS at all. I know, for example, like my husband, if you said, hey, come try out our SCA Arts and Sciences, he would blink at you and walk away. So again, just make sure that what you are kind of presenting at and asking them to come to makes sense for what that person is interested in. Oh, that's awesome, Alexander. So Alexander is talking about their fighter practice and their barony has heavy rapier and amp guard added, which is super awesome. Again, like I said, sharing space, if you have the space to share at practice, is great. There are a couple other groups out there that in the same park or same area, they share their space, and then you know you can go and do rapier and then walk over and go play amp guard, and that's awesome. That's kind of what we're talking about, is just having those really good relationships and bridges with those different groups. Okay. Oop. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of other questions as far as, you know, individual outside of what I've already answered. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, here we go. Sorry, Zeke. The ads can be targeted at very specific interest groups. That is true. So there's a lot of marketing ads that you can do where you make an SCA ad about your local group, and then you can target it at specific, like, I want to target cosplayers. So anybody that's in, like, has that sort of interest, you can create a marketing ad just for an SCA bridge to cosplay or an SCA bridge to martial arts. And they are cheap. That is correct. I have heard that before. I will say our local group has not used the ad feature whatsoever on Facebook, but I know there are a lot of other local groups who have had amazing success with it. I would say if you're going to use that, be very, 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 very careful that you have the structure in place in your local group to handle an influx of new people. So if you do a big targeted ad run, and let's say it's on cosplay, make sure that your artisans, you know, you have that structure already ready for, we have meetups for ANS that's going to be interesting to these people. Everybody's ready to kind of, you know we're going to have those extra new people come in potentially. So I have seen groups where, you know, they've done big recruiting drives and then they didn't have the structure, or everybody wasn't really ready for it. Like they didn't have enough loaner gear. They really struggled with, like, oh, we need to do classes last minute. So if you really prepare your group for that influx before you do it, then that's going to set you up for success and keeping those people if they come through the door. Because the SCA honestly does an amazing job at recruiting. Recruiting is not where the SCA is failing. We don't fail there. We have people show up generally. There are some groups who struggle with local areas and things of that nature. I'm not excluding you in any way. However, generally speaking, the SCA can recruit. Yeah, it's not where we're weak. Where we're weak is in keeping the people coming back. So that's one of the reasons why I talk about continuing to foster that communication between those groups and having that open, welcoming environment, and then making them feel like they're a part of the community is so important. Our local fighter practice shares the cost of fields lights with the dog agility group. Well, there you go. So there's a kind of thinking outside the box, which is awesome. So so yes, hashtag coursing hounds. I love coursing hounds, by the way. Love those Afghans. They're my favorite. So that's another way to kind of think outside of the box with this, is that if you have a local, you know, area or that you want to use, a place you want to use, and somebody else is using it, go hang out and talk to them. Be like, hey, I see that, you guys use this. What do you know about the area? Things like that. And then you can make that connection of like, oh, okay, cool. Because this is what we're looking for. And you're kind of doing the same thing, or not same thing, but in the same place. And then you can establish sort of that connection of, oh, well, you want to have, this field. So do we. Could we share it and then create that sort of bond? And now you're sharing it, and then these people are coming out to see your local event, and maybe you can go cheer their stuff on. So again, it's about kind of creating this sense of I have a connection with these other groups. Does that mean that I go to all their stuff all the time? No. I still have a lot of connections with AmGuard. I haven't been to an AmGuard event in probably, I think, 7 years at this point. That doesn't mean that I don't know people there and I don't talk to them regularly and I don't have communication. I still do. I don't have time to go out and do their stuff. We do have some really regular SCA members who cross game and they do both games. So if you get people who are doing both, we had in the past some issues where somebody got very, very far along within, let's say, the fighting field, and they came up and they're become a really good fighter. They're doing really well. They're involved in the SCA. They show up to one event every other month. They go to local practice, but they're spending equal amount of time in this other cross gaming group that they do. So they're doing the same amount as what some of us who are very obsessed with SCA do, but they're splitting it across 2 games. And so what we don't want to have happen is we don't want that person who is splitting their time to kind of be to look at them and be like, well, if you spent more time in the SCA, you would get farther faster, or penalize them because they want to spend part of their time doing something else that's outside of this hobby. And it seems kind of silly to say, oh, well, that wouldn't happen, except for I have seen it happen. So if you do have somebody who wants to do both, and they are spending a lot of time doing another one or splitting it equally, again, don't judge them for that. They're having fun, they're doing their thing, they're interested, they're still coming to SCA. And would they perhaps become a peer faster if they dedicated all their time in the SCA? Sure, probably, maybe. But they sure wouldn't have as much fun as they are right now splitting it between both, because they get to do all the things they want to enjoy. So the SCA isn't all inclusive. It doesn't mean that we don't have a whole lot of the high fantasy events. We don't have spell casting and a lot of LARPing and things of that nature. So if somebody's really looking for that, they're not going to get it from us, and that's okay. It's good for them to go and do other things. So that's kind of my spiel on that. So I haven't seen really a whole lot of other questions come in. And this is wrapping up actually very, very quickly. So unless there are other questions, I'm probably going to end the class a little bit early. So just real quick, one of the other things is that I do a lot of hospitaler work all within our kingdom, but I also travel a lot. So there's a high likelihood that I may be at an event, especially big inter-kingdom events. And if I'm there and you see me or recognize me or hear I'm there, feel free to come up and say hello, introduce yourself, and say, if you have questions about this class, or if you have questions about anything at all, or just want to say hi. I might not seem approachable in person, but I love having people come up and meeting new people. So please stop by, say hello, and I would love to get to meet everybody in here. So thank you all so much for your time.